and then we'll collect it at the end. So if you please just sign in, I appreciate that. And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and Becky.
Hello. I don't know how we're going to do it. I'm following Ann, but we're going to do our best, okay? So for those of you that I haven't met, I know most of you, but not everybody. My name is Sarah Dorer. I am the Associate Director of Student Conduct and Student Satisfaction Initiatives. Long title primarily means I work in student affairs and spend the majority of my time managing the students who make you be resilient when they come in their office, right, in your office, right? So we'll connect that a little bit. And for those of you who haven't met Becky, I'll let her introduce herself.
I'm Rebecca Whitman. I'm the campus police chief. I think, again, I know or have seen most of you, but for those I have not, I've been here for a year, so you're not too far behind. If there's anything ever that we can do, please don't think we have something better to do. We're here to serve you and the students, so don't hesitate to call our office. And we'll get to that on about slide 6.
Yeah. All right. So again, we are going to jump from like the positive, fun conversation to the discussion about what to do with the students of concern. Most of us don't start our day hoping that we get to test our resiliency by the student who's coming in and yelling at us. But nevertheless, it happens. And our interaction with that student is critical to their experience and in many ways, a part of their educational experience. So we want to talk through, how we can support you, what are your options, what is available, that sort of thing. And for some of you who've attended some of my sessions, I'll try to make it a little bit different, but you will hear some repeat information. For those of you who've never seen this before, stop me with any questions and we can take those as we go, okay? All right. These are the kind of the things we're hoping that you'll know by the end. Now, how many of you are not directly supporting students, you're not seeing students on a daily basis, and maybe you're not directly supporting faculty either. So you're feeling a little bit removed from some of this. Just a couple of you. So take what you can from this. This really will be focused at those who are directly supporting faculty and or seeing students face-to-face on a regular basis. Most of the information I'm going to provide you is for you, what you can do, what you can report, that sort of thing. However, I know some of you get just as many questions from the faculty about, well, how do I do this? Sarah mentioned that there was this thing out there, and I want you to know what those things are too, so that you can help them when they ask. So we'll go into that. There are 3 ways, go ahead, Becky. There are 3 ways that people are reporting students of concern to us. And early alert, if you have not heard of that one, I want to make sure you are aware of it. This is something that is available to faculty members to report students of concern. Now, this is a kind of the lowest level of concern. These are the students who their attendance is slipping, they are academically getting behind with their grades, or they're showing some minor level behavior issues in the classroom. The faculty member is primarily managing it, but it could escalate to the department head or to me eventually, and they want to track those concerns. This is a tool for them. Again, this isn't something you're going to have direct access to, but if they say to you, where do I find that? I want you to know about it. It is in their Blackboard. So all that they have to do is log into Blackboard, and then they have this early alert tab on the far right. And then there's this, we've made it bigger now so that it's easier to find access early alert right here, access early alert. They push that button and they are in there and they can report their students. So again, that's just a piece for you to know that we have out there. And what we're doing with that is really a retention tool. We're really trying to catch students before they fall too far and trying to help them get back engaged in the classroom, get the counseling support that they might need, talk to an advisor about, how they're managing everything, those sorts of concepts is what's really coming out of early alert, and that's why we're using that tool currently. All right, student conduct, that's the heart of what I do. If you haven't, I've got some materials in the back that I think most of you have, but if you don't have them, this kind of breaks down early alert, student conduct, and behavioral intervention, which we're going to talk about. That's back there. This is a kind of smaller brochure of the Student Code of Conduct. If you don't have some of these in your office and you want some to hand to people every now and then, feel free to take some. I can always get you more if you run out as well. So if you haven't seen those, feel free to pick that up. The Code of Conduct outlines kind of 3 general areas of what we expect of our students in terms of their general conduct. That means you may not assault another student. You may not harass another student. Those basic things. You would think they're basic. There are classroom misconduct kind of definitions in there, as well as academic honesty type things. So those are all covered very clearly in our code. In addition to that, it very clearly outlines what we do if they are found responsible for a violation, if I get a report, that sort of thing. So the code is where we would refer students. If a student walked in and said, I just got kicked out of my class and I have to go see this lady, what can you tell me? Refer them to the code, have them read through it so they can kind of see maybe why they got kicked out of class and why they're coming to see me. If you ever need to make a report about code of conduct issues, and you may do that for whatever reason, it may come out of your area specifically, you have access to this. Everybody on campus, all of our students have access to this website, okay? So student conduct webpage is just the homepage / student conduct. And when you get to that website, you'll see there's a report an incident link here on the left. Once you click on the report an incident, it's going to pull up a web form, and you would identify yourself as a staff member, or if you were referring this to a student, they would identify themselves as a student, and then you just fill in some general text boxes, and that will get sent to me automatically. It's a very simple process. It comes right into my email. I get an alert that it's out there, and within minutes, I can have a report generated. If I'm at my desk at that moment, I can have a report generated, and I can have a letter out to the student saying you need to meet with me. So it's a very quick and easy way to report conduct. If you have a student who comes into your office and is just talking to you, or you have student employees who start saying, you know, this other student has been harassing me, these have been the issues, or my ex goes here and has been following me to class and I'm really afraid, these things have come up this week, you know, that sort of thing. They have the right to report those things directly too, and you can always let them know they can make this report here, they can come and see me, they can call me directly, so there's a lot of different resources depending on where the concern is coming from. When I get a code of conduct report, here is the response. I have to let the student know that they have been charged, that I have a report, and they're potentially in violation. They have the right to speak with me and tell me their perspective and their side of the story, and give me any witnesses they want me to talk to in their investigation, that sort of thing. And then I have to make a decision about whether or not they're responsible. If so, they're held responsible to the code of conduct. I determine what sanction level is appropriate, and the whole ultimate goal is education, where the goal is not punitive, the goal is to be educational. This is a learning opportunity for them. Make the mistake once, you can learn from it. Make the mistake twice, we're going to treat you a little differently. But the whole idea is, let's help you understand what it is that you did wrong in this situation and how you can improve. Now that doesn't mean that if you make a major mistake, like beating up somebody else, we're going to let you stay and learn that in our system. You're probably going to take some time off and learn that away from us, but it is still meant to be educational, so it may not feel it in the moment I tell them that.
We might help them learn that too.
Right. So that's kind of how we process conduct. Has anybody not heard of the behavioral intervention team at this point? Has everybody kind of heard about this at least? Okay. For those who, this is newer, so for those who don't know much about it, the behavioral intervention team was formalized about a year or so ago. It's existed prior to that, but it wasn't really a formal team who met regularly like it is now. This is a team of 8 of us, I believe there are 8 of us, who meet every other week, and we receive reports on a constant basis, and I review those and determine if we need any emergency meetings prior to the next actual scheduled meeting. The 8 of us were determined according to our role on campus and what we do, and we did a lot of national research to decide who's best be on these teams, that sort of thing. So we've done a lot of training, professional development, that sort of thing, to make sure we know how to run this. The concept of the behavioral intervention team, these were created post-Virginia Tech is kind of what I would say. That's when it really became a big movement in our field to say, if you're going to be functioning with a best practice in this area, you need to have one of these teams in place. What we learned after Virginia Tech is that about 60 pieces of information existed about Cho in that situation that nobody had in one place. So Penny had some information over here, Nicole had some information over there, Kathy had some information over here, and had we put all those pieces together, we might have responded to him differently in those situations. That's the goal of the team. We cannot, and no one, the FBI will tell us, we cannot predict who the next school shooter will be. The school shooter is not the real concern to us, to be honest. I mean, that it is. We don't want one. But the purpose of this team is to catch trends of students who are, something's changing, something's not quite right, and let us see if we can intervene before it does potentially become a problem. So again, we don't want people to be afraid when we talk about this team. We don't think, okay, we definitely are going to be the place where there is going to be one of these. We know we have a school shooter among us. We don't. Nobody can predict that. But we hope that if we have somebody who might be trending towards that we're going to start to see it well before it actually gets there. People talk about that somebody just snaps. Most of the time, these situations that you hear about in the news, these mass shootings, those are not people who just snapped. Those are people who planned and prepared for years to do what they did. And they were emotionally disconnecting that entire time, and they were leaking information. And that's kind of the goal now, is that we are to pick up some of those leaks. I mean, most of these people and the information we've learned and read, most of them very clearly articulated their specific plans to people before they actually committed their crime. And we either have become too sensitive, desensitized to these kinds of discussions that people have, that people didn't report it, that people didn't get concerned, and they didn't bring it to the forefront that, ooh, this might be a real issue. So that's what the team is for. So we want you to know that this is a place that you can report information. This is the same kind of web form. And it's that just /bit, B-I-T. There are repositionable stickers. Most of you probably got one on opening day. If you didn't know this was a sticker, it is. It's a challenge to get the little paper off the back. So if you're bored one day, just see how long it takes you. Time yourself, pick up a few extras. So you can stick these wherever you want, take them down, put them back up, that sort of thing. So we encourage you to take a look at this form. You can report things there. You can send that. You can have faculty, staff, anybody can report things on this website as well. These are not emergent situations, okay? Do not report the person who's in your office screaming and you feel is truly threatening you, right, at that moment. Do not report them to BIT. Do not call me. All right, and we've had that happen, and I understand it. People hear me, and so then the student's angry and they're yelling, and someone will call me and say, "Now what do I do?" And I said, "Do you feel threatened?" "Well, kinda." "Okay, let's hang up and call them." You know, and that's what the police are here for. I'm not coming to break up the fight. That's their job. We have a very close relationship. We talk on a daily basis.
Normally by 8:30 a.m.
Right. So we will make it work, and we'll take care of it together. But they're the first responder. Okay, so examples of what you report to BIT. People always ask us, tell me, I don't really understand what goes there. Let's just use student employees for a minute. How many of you work with student employees? So you see some people, okay, so most of you. Let's say you see your student employee has been there on time, regularly. Typically they're clean shaven or well-groomed and responding well to customers. And let's say all of a sudden you're seeing something different. Suddenly you're getting them, they're absent a lot and not telling you why or not calling in. They're not clean and showered when they come in. They're dressing different. They're not responsive when you're asking them to do the same tasks they were before. They're responding differently to customers who are walking in. Those are some very significant changes you're seeing in that student. And we tell faculty the same things when they see these things in the classrooms. A lot of times when we see a very sudden shift in a person who was kind of maintaining themselves to not, there's something coming on for them. There's something going on. And it could just be one life circumstance is really working heavy on them, and they're experiencing some minor short-term depression, or potentially they're developing something that's going to be more long-term. That the average age onset for new mental illness and that sort of thing tends to be between 18 and 23. So we have a core population of people who may never have struggled with something like depression before that may now be a first-time thing for them, and they may have no clue that they're even feeling it or how to manage it, that sort of thing. I was meeting with a young woman the other day who showed the signs of dealing with something. I couldn't determine what. I'm not a counselor, but there was some real things going on. And I asked her, are you experiencing feelings of depression? And her answer was maybe. Like she really, truly was trying to figure that out. These are new feelings for some of these people. And so they are at a point of needing some help, but they don't even know that yet. They don't know how to ask for that help. So sudden changes. Anything where a student has written or verbally made a very direct threat, we want to address that. Now again, our society has gotten a little bit lax with this. Think about yourself, think about the people you work around. I can tell you the people I work around who I hear somewhat regularly, and I regularly bring it up, "Oh, I'm going to kill him." We use that language. We've all used that language, but it's changing. The world is changing, and we just have to be more conscious of that language because some people mean it, unfortunately. Most people don't, but some people do. So we have had a large increase in students tweeting their thoughts, and they don't filter those. So I just walked out of your office, and I'm absolutely pissed off right now, and I'm going to tell the world, and I'm going to tell them on Twitter, and I'm going to tell them by saying, I'm going back down to that office, and I'm going to kill them. Last week,
Several.
ago?
We've actually had several since just the beginning of school this calendar year. Not something that I've ever seen or heard of before. Our prosecutor in Kent County has not dealt with it before. They're choosing right now not to write a misdemeanor warrant for those students, something that I disagree with. I think they should be written. I think they should be charged, and I think they should be held accountable. In most of those cases with a misdemeanor, they can be diverted and eventually wipe their record clean if they stay clean and don't commit any other crimes. But in this society, it's almost across the board nationally, police and many college disciplinarians want them addressed formally so that it does become a norm that you can't do this.
Right.
It's accepted that you can't do this, not it's acceptable to do it. And the tweets have been targeted in financial aid. People get denied financial aid. They don't understand why. They don't feel like they're getting help the way they should, and they leave and say they're going to blow up the financial aid office. I'm going to bomb the financial aid office. They my problem.
What was the most recent one? Wasn't them, though?
The most recent one was something about, I'm going to go get a gun and take care of this, or something like that. Every one of those, we have identified the student with most of the time, almost immediately. In one case, I think it took us a couple hours because the identity that they had listed was a first name and the last name that didn't apply to them. So it took us a little longer, but we did find them, and we have gone out to their homes, which was a bit of a shock because traditionally campus police here have never done that. I have a different philosophy from our previous chief. I'm like, no, you can go knock on their door. It's okay to do that. We can go do an investigation that takes us off campus. They find it a little shocking when we call their home, talk to mom, and say, yeah, I need to talk to your daughter. Most of the time these are females. Reference something that they just tweeted, and we need to talk about it.
I think
All
every
I do
time
is
we've
send
done
in
it
that
so
little
far.
tickle bug to mom. I'm not telling her too much information, but no, I need to talk to your daughter immediately. And they immediately get on the phone with their daughter. Why is this police chief calling my house? And we follow up on that. So almost always their Twitter account is closed within 24 hours. And we find those, for those that don't know, our communications department monitors all social media for the ticklers of GRCC or Grand Rapids Community College. Anything that's in there, that's how you get the media stuff on GRCC today, the media reports, anything that's out there. So they monitor all the media outlets as well as social media. So if somebody's got a Twitter account and they type in GRCC, that's how we get that message. If they were to say, I'm going to blow up the financial aid office, we're not going to get that. Was at GRCC today, going to blow up the financial aid office? That's what we'll see. So
just so you know, we are taking it very seriously. We are sending the word on our campus, this will not be tolerated. They do the home visit, they do the investigation, they scare them. And then they let them know you could technically be charged with a misdemeanor. We're going to choose not to. So then we look like we are supporting them, even though the
we
prosecutors
could charge them
right.
with a 20-year felony.
Right.
The college is choosing not to do that. The
Right.
20-year felony doesn't have the same requirements to intimidate you specifically, and you have to see the message. The terrorism threat can be generic and not have a targeted person, and then we could charge them. But we think a 20-year felony is a bit harsh.
A little bit more than we're looking for. So so then they come through my office, and they do have to go through the conduct system, and we are then processing. Most of the time, these are people who did not think about the fact that we could see them, see those tweets. Matter of fact, if you talk to your students, a lot of them apparently do not realize how public Twitter is, how public Facebook is. They don't know necessarily that employers are looking at these things these days when they're interviewing. There's a huge educational movement around social media for our students. So we help them, we educate them on that, and then we ask them to do some reflection and all that before they rejoin us in the community and that sort of thing. And we haven't suspended anyone yet for that because they really have been empty threats at this point, but we do take care of those. So anyway, back to this. Anything that you hear, students referencing weapons, extreme feelings of hate, thoughts of violence, writing things that, sometimes we'll have faculty members bring in something a student threw away in the garbage and they had drawn really kind of disturbing pictures, that sort of thing. Those things all come through the behavioral intervention team, and we will manage it from there. These are examples that I share often, so if you've heard these before, I apologize, but people always, if I forget this bullet, people will bring me back to it. What did that mean, angry oranges? So these are examples of what we do. We had a faculty member who called me because she was disturbed that this student had yelled at her, or something of that nature. And we got into this discussion about about this moment of yelling. People don't like to be yelled at. I get a lot of calls about that. The person who's yelling is still very emotionally connected. We can manage that. We can talk through your anger. We can calm down and come back and be fine. I'm not so worried about the yeller. However, after we got talking a little and I asked a few more questions, it turns out that the student was also delivering oranges to the instructor every day with angry faces drawn on them. Okay, see, I'm seeing the eyebrows go, huh, right? It makes you go, huh? So that to me was like, whoa, let's back up 5 minutes ago. Let's put that at the front of the story, okay? Because there's something weird about that, right? We don't every day have people delivering oranges to us with angry faces on them. So we want to look for the things that are abnormal. Another one was the same kind of situation. The instructor was concerned that the person that was yelling at them. So we were talking through it. Same thing. I'm asking more questions. Tell me about what the students normally like, that sort of thing. And eventually she says, the other weird thing about that day was he was wearing a ski mask and goggles in class the whole day. That was kind of a day about as warm as it's supposed to be today. Well, okay, that's weird, right? Typically, we don't wear our ski mask and goggles to class, so let's talk about that. There's something not quite normal about that. Again, I can deal with him yelling, but what was motivating that student to wear his mask and goggles that day? Because that is abnormal. The white bucket person was carrying around rocks and other odd belongings in a 5-gallon white bucket all over campus. And it was people like you that started making these reports. Like, this guy was just in my office. He was carrying this big 5-gallon white bucket full of weird things. Just kind of odd. People just noting that. Okay, so now you've got 3 very odd things, right? So what we do is we go in and we talk as a team. What do we know about this student? And have we heard about them anywhere before? What can we find out from faculty about how they're interacting in class? What do we know? Do they have on-campus employment? And how are they acting when they work with Penny every day? That sort of thing. So we look at first, what do we know about the student? And then we look at the specific report we have. Okay, is that something that we should follow up on? Is that just something we file for now? With all 3 of those examples that I gave you, they're weird enough, we're going to follow up on each and every one of those. So we did have an interaction with each and every one of those students. Angry orange person, it turns out, is an art student just exploring her creativity and doing some things like that. All legitimate and fine. We talked about what you might want to talk with your instructor, or maybe make happy faces next time, something of that sort. But nothing of concern to us. Off our case, we close it, we're done. Unless she comes up some other way, we're not going to worry about her. Ski mask guy, in our meeting with him, he's a little off. There was not a legitimate reason for him to be wearing that, and he could not describe for us anything that made us feel good about that decision. Now, he wasn't a threat. We had no reason to believe he was going to harm anybody, but he's someone we would then do what we call monitoring. Okay, let's wait and see where this guy pops up again, or check in on him every now and then. He chose to leave us, so we were okay with that. Now, white bucket person, this actually happened before I was here. The white bucket person truly was a concern. White bucket person was truly going through some very significant mental health issues and truly needed to be removed from the community for now. And had people like you not started to call in and say, this guy has this white bucket and this is going on, we might not have known that until things had gotten worse for him or for us. So again, we never know what's going to be what. Probably 9.75% of the time out of 10, 9.75 out of 10 times, it is nothing. The student may be having some weird, like I'm experiencing this and I'm going to do that and it's manageable. But every now and then it is something, and that's why we have this team. Okay, I've spent a long time on that because it's kind of new. Do people have questions about this team right now? Paula?
Quick question. So if I see somebody with the ski mask, do I stop and say, who are you? Or how do I know that person has to report to you? Or do I?
Let's say you're just passing on campus and you see them and it's a little weird. What I personally do, I don't stop them. I call my friends at campus police. I normally have my cell phone on me or near me, and I call and I say, you know what, I'm walking on the commons right now, and I just passed this guy. He's wearing a gray hoodie and a ski mask, and he's headed towards the main building. There's nothing weird about him. I just wanted you to know. And typically, they'll just send someone out to see if he's still in the area and what he might be doing.
The first thing we're going to check for is, are you a student? Do you have a real reason to be on our campus? And it's something that especially you folks deal with more so than faculty or many of our other staff, because you guys are more on the front lines of those office spaces. So you really need to be aware that not everybody that maybe seems a little off or normal has a real reason to be on our campus. We're in downtown Grand Rapids. We have people that come through, and we've been able to recognize our trespassers this week more than any other because nobody else is here. So don't hesitate, and that's where I go back to my very first comment. Don't think we're doing something better, because if we are, your call will wait. But most of the time we're not, and we've got somebody available that can check out that person that we would describe as a suspicious person. All we're going to do is check on them. You know, where are you going? What are you doing? Do you have your ID on you? They hand us their school ID. Then, if we deem what they're doing to be a little odd, we'll pass that report on to Sarah, and then she will send them the information to come in and meet with them and say, kind of what's going on with you right now? What can we do to help you? And if that's all it is, then we move them into whatever areas we need to get them the help they need. And if they don't belong on our campus, then we can address that issue at that time. So the sooner the better when we start recognizing people that if you think they're suspicious, you're probably right. A few slides earlier, you probably saw the slide that said, trust your gut. Mm-hmm. Most important thing that we can tell you today, trust your gut. Mm-hmm. Just like if you've got kids or the students you deal with, you know when they're not right. You know when they're not feeling well. You know when something's wrong. Trust your gut. You're probably right.
You know, I'm going to pick on the counseling center because we're close too. I talk to them just as often as I do the police department. And I have found, and I have now been here 3 years. I feel new sometimes, but it has been 3 years. And what I found right away was you all especially, more than anybody else on this campus, were dealing with things that you shouldn't have been dealing with on your own. You were putting up with behaviors that you shouldn't have been putting up with, and you were managing situations because I think a lot of people felt like they had to or they didn't know where else to go with them. And so part of what I want you to hear today is there is support for you. You are not paid enough to deal with some of these people. You are not expected to. So I'm going to go to an example. There was a woman that came into counseling, and she was very, very demanding. And she wanted to see somebody immediately, and the front desk staff said, well, we don't have anybody, and she was so demanding, they eventually found somebody that could. Well, while she was waiting, she had to wait 10 minutes because the person that was going to see her was in with something else. While she was waiting, she basically passed out on the couches in the counseling area. This woman was intoxicated. Now, the counseling staff felt very close. I mean, nobody could have known that in that moment. Nobody could have known that this is somebody who has been dealing with an addiction issue in that moment. But she was, and she was clearly passed out. And our sense of helping is very much like, well, we just want to take care of the student. And so they did a lot to revive it, like wake her up and get her in with the counselor that she wanted to be in there with and whatever. She met with the counselor. So they managed the whole thing. I didn't hear about any of it until the counselor kind of mentioned, you know, here's this experience that we had today. And as we started looking into it, and we put her into the bit, she was having other issues in other places. And she ended up needing to take some time away from us to get herself some rehabilitation and that sort of thing. And I thought to myself, you know, the fact that so many people in counseling were willing to work with this woman who clearly was not in a right state of mind. You know, we want to empower you to know if something's not right. It is not normal for somebody to pass out on your couch. Now, sleeping, we know some of them are going to sleep every now and then, but you can typically tell the difference. You can't wake the person up, they're probably passed out. Call campus police. Just let them know what's going on, because it's better for us to make that contact and determine there isn't anything going on than to not make the contact when there is something there. Okay? I went through that already. So we're going to talk about this part, this creating the civil workspaces. And this is the part I've done. I know some of you have heard before, but I want to make sure that you do hear this loud and clear from us. You do have support. You do not have to put up with abuse from our students. And we are not teaching them anything if we allow them to abuse us at the front line. Okay? So we have students, we understand, and it's okay to be empathetic, but you have, if with a few tools, you should be able to tell the difference and work through either the student who just needs to vent, and you might have been the place that they landed on, versus the student who's truly abusive and not willing to speak with you because they are looking for the dean or the president or whoever, you know, that they want to talk to. So let's talk through this a little bit. And I realized I left this in here, and then I lost my magnet the last time I was doing this. But how many of you still have, just out of curiosity, have seen the GRCC Excellence Guidelines that were on magnets at one point? Any of you know what I'm talking about? All right, we clearly need to get more of those, so I'm going to make a note of that. I'll work with you on that. There are these GRCC Excellence Guidelines, and we'll make sure to try to get those out to everybody that were created years ago. And they're the very basic things like, asking questions, welcoming people when they walk in, making eye contact with them, not doing cold transfers, making sure if you are going to send somebody to another office, there's somebody there before you send them that's the right office if you're not 100% sure. It's those very basic things that if we focus on our excellence and our service, which I know you all do on a daily basis, that in and of itself is a huge preventative measure in terms of dealing with students that could become behavior issues. Oftentimes we get students who do get bounced around, and you've seen them all. I'm sure you have all experienced a student who's bounced from office to office, and by the time they get to your office and you still aren't the right place, they are just mad. And understandably so. They've been here and they don't know where they're going, and they're confused and they're scared and they're looking for help and they don't feel like they're getting it. And so I think it's important for us to recognize sometimes they have legitimate reasons for being mad. Sometimes they have legitimate concerns and complaints about the service we've provided or the college or our process. We all know that we have some processes in place that need some work, right? So if they're annoyed by it, we have to kind of put ourselves in their position sometime and think about the last time we experienced service like that and how frustrated we were, and recognize that even though you may not have caused that issue, you happen to be experiencing it, so you're feeling it at that moment. So if we focus on the good service, we start with the preventative at the very basic. Some of you work in areas that are pretty public and have a lot of people in and out, so I know we have worked on, in some of those areas, posting policies if you need them. If you have a policy in your area about cell phone use, or if you have policies about computer use in your area, that sort of thing, we want to make sure they are posted clearly so we don't catch anybody off guard, that sort of thing. And then we do want to address behavior problems immediately. And we'll talk about, I know that's different depending on the type of area you're in. Okay. Anybody been yelled at by a student before? Anyone? Okay. So let's just use the yeller, because that tends to be the most common. I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm taking it out on you. It's your fault, you're in my way, etc. All right, so when we are dealing with that person, we want to start first with assuming the best in every situation, assuming maybe it is our fault, assuming maybe something we did was wrong, assuming we can help that student. We always want to start with the best intentions, right? So you listen, try to respond, try to understand what they're going through, and then listen again if you need to, right? So you're kind of trying to get at what's going on. Now, it can be very hard, especially if they start making it personal, to avoid getting defensive and to avoid making assumptions about them as a person, where they come from, what they're bringing to the table. It is impossible for most people. I think it's gotten easier because I've done this for so long to do this, but you have got to not take it personally. They don't know you as a person. They are not attacking you as a person. They may sound like it. They may be saying, you did this to me, you are in the way. It is not personal. You are simply the person who happens to be at the desk in that particular moment that they're trying to manage that. And if you can remember that it's not personal, it gets much easier to deal with. When you remember this is their issue right now. They are projecting their anger, they are projecting their issue on me, and it is not worth my time or energy to get sucked into that. It is not worth that, and it's not going to help. So trying to disconnect from that as much as possible. So you want to, as best as you can, clearly state what it is you need from them and what the consequences will be if you don't get that from them. So I'm now in Kathy's office, and I know Kathy gets this a lot. I come to the Dean of Students' office when I don't know where else to go, and I'm angry. And I'm yelling at Kathy. Kathy, of course, is so kind. We all know that, right? She's just, okay, I'm listening, But if I'm yelling, and I'm yelling loud enough that the people in the lounge can hear me, then that's not appropriate. That's not how you come in and you address anybody in any office. So I'm Kathy, I'm going to say, I understand you're frustrated, and I really want to help you, but I cannot help you if you keep yelling at me like this. If you're willing to talk to me, I would like to help you. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to move on or schedule a meeting with my supervisor. So you're giving them the opportunity to calm down. You're saying, I want to talk with you, or you're moving on. I have rarely not had that work. I have students in my office yell at me every single day. And I will not continue the conversation while they're yelling. Now, there is a difference between the yeller and the loud talker, and we all know that. And even with the loud talker, when you've got the loud talker, I just bring it down like 2 or 3 notches and talk much quieter than I would with someone else. And if they don't get it naturally, I'll say, you know what? You're kind of loud. The people out there can hear everything you're saying. I'm right here. Can you just bring it down a notch? And you can do it casually. But with the yeller, do not continue a conversation with somebody who's yelling at you. Give them the opportunity to improve their behavior or ask them to stop. all right? And if they can't stop, if they're just, then that is when you say, I can no longer help you. Would you like to schedule to meet with my supervisor about this issue, or would you like to move on? Now, if they keep yelling and they're challenging your authority after you've told them that, after you've given them their options and they're going to keep yelling, then you say, if you continue to yell at me, I will call our friends at campus police to remove you. Or you can choose to move on. And you say it just as calmly as that, if not quieter. Because you're giving them the options to change their behavior. You're not giving them permission to yell at you. You are still saying you're going to help them. You're not saying, get out of here, I don't want to help you, you're a jerk. You're trying to help them, but you're giving them options of how to improve their behavior. And a lot of times, people will say, oh, it's the entitled student. They think that they can do this, it's that, whatever. If you meet with enough students, enough parents, you'll recognize some of our students were taught to manage their issues that way. Some of our students saw by example that to handle an issue, you yell at people like this. And so some of them have never been told, have never been given limits to say, you need to speak quieter in this office setting. So that's part of our educational opportunity with them, okay? These are tips for confrontation that you've probably heard, but I just repeat them because as we're thinking through these things, they are not natural if you don't do it often. These do not come naturally. So staying calm, keeping your voice well below theirs, trying to be direct, trying to use the I statements versus the you. And so instead of saying, you're incredibly rude, saying, I am feeling disrespected in this moment. I am feeling uncomfortable with the way you're speaking to me. And I would like to help you, but I'm not feeling I can do that right now. That's a very different message than you're being a jerk, get out of my office. All right, so sometimes it's just about how we say it. And it's constantly affirming what they're saying or acknowledging their position. You may totally disagree with it, and you can still say it differently. I understand you feel like that faculty member is totally in the wrong. I would like to talk with you about how to manage that if you will calm down and talk to me in a mature way, in a respectable way. And then you can give them the process. But until then, no, it doesn't matter. If they can't calm down, you don't need to serve them. I'm going to go to the next part. Same thing happens on the phone. I know a lot of you end up on the phone with people who are yelling. You can use the exact same lines on the phone. They're yelling. You can say, you know what, I understand that there's something real concern to you. I would really like to help you, but I need you to talk to me without yelling. And then we can move forward. If they keep yelling, you can say, I'd like to give you one more opportunity to stop yelling at me. Otherwise, I'm going to have to end this call. And you may have to hang up on some of them. Now, please don't do that right away. Give them a warning. Give them at least the opportunity to change. Tell them that that's what you're going to do if they don't calm down. And then if you do hang up on them, you can explain it. If they call back and they're mad and they want to talk to your supervisor, you can say, here's the steps that I went through with that person, and they're continuing to yell at me. I don't know many supervisors on this campus who are not going to back you up in terms of saying, you do not need to be yelled at, okay? So if you've got one, you let me know, and I'll try to do some education there too.
A small example of that, I spent a year working in internal affairs where we would pull phone calls that were off recorded lines, whether it be a dispatcher or interns taking our front desk complaints, where they would have a person who would not stop screaming at them. And it's remarkable when you play that tape back for that complainant, and the person talking to them from the agency is saying, sir, excuse me, I can't hear you if you're going to continue to yell and swear at me. Sir, I need you to calm down. Sir, I'm going to end this call if you don't stop yelling at me. Excuse me, I'm going to hang up now. Do you want to talk to me? Okay, I'm hanging up now. Please call back when you're ready to have your complaint filed. Goodbye. And they're hearing that, please, thank you, sir, over and over again in a calm voice. They pretty much walk out of the office pretty embarrassed. So the same thing would happen with the student when it can be reported back by the supervisor. Well, we tried to help you. Do you understand why she had to hang up on you, or why he had to hang up on you? They'll come around to that, and they'll understand, yeah, I was probably out of line, and I'm sorry, but I'm really angry.
So to just quickly wrap that up on the next slide, the things that we need from you in those situations. You do need to document that kind of thing, because they're going to be on the phone to your supervisor or that person's supervisor immediately. So you want to try to get to them first with like a high priority email, or if you see them, say, before you check your voicemail, just so you know, I transferred in this person whom I could not manage, and they were yelling at me, and so I've told them that the next best thing they can do, they can talk to you if they can't control talking to me. So you want to document your concern, your experience with that student, write up some kind of email, write up something so that your supervisor knows what happened in that situation. And you do want to report students of concern. If you have, typically if we have somebody who's so angry and so mad in the enrollment center will call me and say, Sarah, we just had this experience. And before I know it, Diane's people are calling. Well, Sarah, they're down in records now. And then Elaine is calling from the president. Sarah, they're in my office now, and I can track them. Over the 30-minute period, they've been in all these areas. So you do want to report students of concern. We've all heard that, I'm going to get my lawyer, I'm going to call the media. Well, if they want to call the media, call the media. That'll be fine. The lawyer piece, most of our students are saying that just as a threat. Some of them aren't. So if they say I'm going to get my lawyer, then you say, well, if you could please provide me with the name of your counsel, it's my responsibility to forward that onto our general counsel if you are indeed going to contact someone. Most of the time they'll go, oh, never mind, I'm not going to get into, and they'll walk away. If by any chance somebody provides you with name of counsel, you just end that conversation immediately. You are no longer serving that person. They can go through, if they're getting their lawyer involved and they've provided you a name, you send that directly to Kathy Keating or have your supervisor send it on, and they will talk, but that doesn't happen very often. So the people that are here to support you, we've talked about many times, your supervisor, me, the counseling center. If you have a student in distress and you don't know what else to do, you could always call over there and talk to them about, can I refer people over today? They are doing walk-ins on more regular basis now, so I know that that's been helpful, even though those aren't long appointments, but, and then the police department. So those are other people. Now, Becky's going to give you a little bit more information about some safety tips, and then we'll wrap it up with it.
There's been a change in our phone system, as you know. So our phones, depending on which one you have, operate a little bit differently. They do have the code 2 button. However, the newer phones, to my knowledge, if you knock the phone off the hook, does not automatically call campus police, where the old phones did do that. With the new phones, you have to intentionally press the code 2 button, which we frankly prefer because 99.9% of the time when the phones are knocked off the hook accidentally, person doesn't know they've knocked it off, so we yell into the phone for a long time, then we end up sending an officer to a classroom or an office that's operating perfectly fine. So make sure that you press that code 2 button. If you can stay on the line with the dispatcher, that's great. If it is a situation where you're trying to have that conversation or have us be aware that there's an emergency, like a silent 911 call where you don't want the person to know that you called us, then just press that button and we will send an officer to your office or to the classroom, wherever that call is coming from. Okay? Does everybody understand the code 2? Okay. And as always, be aware of your environment. Be aware of who's normally around you, and what's normal for your office. If something happens or someone's there that you've never seen before, and again, you guys know our students almost better than anybody else because you see them all, not just who you have in your class. So if you have someone that either is behaving odd, looks odd, every day is in the Welcome Center at Sneeden Hall from 9 a.m. to 4 with a shopping cart and bags, and they're just sitting there all day long, probably don't need to be there. So go ahead and pick up the phone and call us, and get us over there. And that was a real case. It took about a week and a half before somebody decided that it was worthy of letting us know that this might be odd. Okay. Make sure you're aware of the lockdown and evacuation routes in and around your office space. We are in the process of reevaluating our emergency management procedure and making some changes there. For example, some of our high-ranking administrators in our buildings are responsible for assisting with evacuations and making sure the buildings are clear. Really? How often are those people in their offices? Right. Okay? So that's really not the person that we need to do that. You are. And I know there's some hesitancies on some people's part to take on that kind of responsibility with what your normal roles are, but our custodians, our maintenance staff, our support staff, they are our best line when we're trying to make sure that our offices and our classrooms and our students are getting out safely and where they're supposed to be. So kind of be watching for that to come, but make sure you're aware of where within your normal workspace, where do we go when the tornado sirens sound and when we put the announcement over the air.
How does code 2 work for off-campus sites, like in Holland, we're in Holland? So if I do the code 2, where would that call go, and how would you respond?
You don't have code 2 in Holland, so you call 911.
And your 911 is going to go to Ottawa County
right.
or to Holland PD, depending on which.
So our phone system is connected to.
That's correct.
Campus?
That's correct. The code 2 is all computerized so if you press that, it dials directly into our office. So we don't respond out to the lake shore.
But so he does have code 2 buttons, so we wouldn't want them to use those.
I don't know that that's true. And that's where
We'll have to find that out.
I think we checked on this before, and right now you do not.
Okay.
And the PA system that we would have here, I think we have the ability to do that from our center to your buildings, but we have to log in specifically to your buildings to do that, because they are separate. So you're better off, if you have an emergency, to call 911. On campus, that is 4911. A lot of times people want to forget that 4 button. If you call 911 with a medical emergency or anything like that, GRPD is going to get that call first. And again, that still gets medical going immediately, but it doesn't get us going. They then, after they get off the medical call us. We then send an officer, which is closer on campus, and we normally beat the ambulance by a few minutes. But
with the code 2 button and the silent recording, do we have to take the phone off the hook in order for it not to be heard over the loudspeaker? So like if I've got a student standing in front of me, that's a concern, and I hit code 2. If I leave the phone on the hook, are you going to announce, this is GRCC police, blah, blah, because I'm at Wealthy. So it's an offsite campus, and it's going to take...
we are requesting for the most part to stay on the phone and tell us what the problem is. Okay. If you absolutely cannot, and we have a silent code 2, until we can confirm it, if we hear something going on, if we can hear you saying, sir, settle down, I'll do everything I can for you, please put the gun away. If you can have that conversation with the person, our officers and dispatchers are trained not to answer. Police department,
right.
Okay?
Right.
We're supposed to just pick up and listen.
Okay.
There can be a mistake that can happen if they're busy doing a bunch of things and they just reach for the phone that's ringing. But they're trained to, if it's a code 2, to not answer the phone. They're just supposed to listen. So if you're talking and they can hear a disturbance or they can hear something going on, then they're not going to talk back to you. We're just going to send someone. But if you're silent and there's no noise and they know it's coming from your phone, you might hear in the phone, Teresa, Teresa, can you pick up the phone? Teresa?
Okay.
Okay.
If one more question, want to answer that question, then we'll go to...
Code 2 button on the new phone. If I press that button, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
If the receiver is down, are you able to hear me?
I think so. If you want
It
me
would
to,
be
I
on
can
speakerphone.
confirm that. I think when we have to pick up our end, but yes, if you press the button, it should go right through. You don't have to take the phone off the hook. Okay?
Can do that real
Make sure
fast.
that we also, we've got just a second here. We have the escort service that we will escort students, faculty, staff to and from classes or from their cars to classes, especially if they're having a problem with a student or anything like that. Understand we have that available and offer that to the students as well. And again, please report. Last but not least, Campus Security Authority. Even though whatever your role is, you might not think you have a role that obligates you to report because of federal law. If you are in a position that you deal with students on a frontline basis, like you are a greeter in a building, you are an advisor to a student group, or a number of other things, coaches, not counselors who are advising in a mental health capacity, but advisors who are advising on an academic level, have an obligation that if somebody reports, I was raped last night, you have to report that to us, even if that victim does not want to file a police report. Federal law requires us to report that regardless of their willingness to come forward. So by the end of this week, I'll be sending my annual letters out to all the people we've identified as CSAs or campus security authorities, advising them that you might be a campus security authority. If you have questions about what your role is and whether or not you're concerned that you might be, that's what you need to call me and we'll talk about it. Okay?
Okay, real quick, I want to do a plug and then we have to let you go because it's time for your next one. You've heard about the complaint management team in the past. I want you to know we have a new name. As we've gone through the Baldridge application process, we're making some changes to this whole thing. We've got a new name. We are now the Student Feedback Management Team. And we want to just remind you, and we're hoping if this becomes a tradition that we'll get in front of you next year for some more specific training around our customer service and whatnot. But this is just a reminder of all the places we can send students to manage processes that we already have in place. So if I have a complaint about an instructor, We're not going to have the Dean of Student Affairs hearing that complaint. We're going to say, you talk to your instructor, and then you talk to your department head if you're not satisfied. And then if you're not satisfied, that's when you go to the associate dean in that area. So we want to use the processes that we have in place because we're now making sure that in these areas, we're recording those things in the right places. So we want to make sure we're kind of capturing all this information in the right places. So all of the different processes we have in place are on here, and then if you didn't know, at the very bottom you'll see we now have a general online comment form. So if a student just comes in and they just have a complaint that they just want to tell somebody, and either you don't know what to do with it or they don't know what to do with it. Let's say, for instance, we just had one about there's not enough clocks on campus. Okay, well, nobody really knows what to do with that, right? So you go to this online comment form and just put that, either they can do it or you can do it, and submit that in there, and it comes to the student feedback management team, and then we'll deal with it. And now we're going to put some more clocks on campus. So it's as simple as that, okay? So just keep this in the back of your mind, and feel free to ask me any questions as you move throughout the day if we didn't answer your questions in this session.